Good afternoon. It's Friday the 6th of November. We promised you another update with the Human Results podcast. Wow, Alasdair, there's a little bit gone on between the last podcast and this one, hasn't there?
Yes, Ben, we've seen a pretty dramatic week. A U-turn in terms of furlough scheme. Basically, we've gone back to August now, which is great news for those employees still employed and indeed their employers. Furlough pay has gone back to 80%, up to that £2,500 maximum. It's a big relief for many. It's easy to be critical of the government to say that a lot of people have probably already lost their jobs before that happened. But equally, I've had some clients in the pub trade who've changed their intentions and have hung on to staff a bit longer. So he has saved jobs. I think we're going to see some greater detail on the 10th. We're back to the job retention scheme that we saw in August. You can flexibly furlough where you still may have a need for employees to undertake some work. Obviously, that's unlikely to be in hospitality, but I've spoken to some clients who, for example, have still got hotel rooms, which are quite busy with business travel. So staff are needed to serve takeaway breakfasts and evening meals to hotel rooms. It will hopefully put the brakes on some planned redundancies, although undoubtedly quite a few redundancies were taking place out of necessity because of the increased onus on employers to pay in times when they just didn't have enough work.
And what do you make of it being until March?
Well, I think it's really a reflection of the double dip recession that's now that we're now facing, and also, of course, it keeps options open to see where the R rate is in December and decide whether, in fact, we're going to have to carry on with further lockdown restrictions. Interesting to see with Wales what we see. I think the Welsh Assembly have assured businesses that they will be back on Monday, and you might remember Stuart and from the Hall Inn, as I understand it from Stuart, they can resume food and drink indoors, albeit people have to book a table, and that table has to be a maximum of 4. Unless it's the same family bubble where I think it can be bigger. They've been assured that will resume, notwithstanding the fact that parts of Wales have not seen any significant drop in the R rate. Some of the Welsh valleys are still sound pretty bad to me, but they're back on Monday. That's not to say that come the following Monday, with the assurance of the UK-wide furlough scheme now available again, that we don't see further lockdowns in Wales and indeed in Scotland. But I'm not a politician. I'm a humble employment lawyer trying to make head of and tail of what's going on. Capable of change again, but Wales will resume. So Ben, if you fancy driving to Welshpool for a pint with me on Tuesday night, then you're off on key worker duties.
As you know, I'm editing a magazine in the motoring industry, and the motoring industry's no restriction on the motoring industry. So I am in an office 3 days a week, but the phones are quieter, but the news isn't. The amount of press releases we're getting saying we're still open for people, it's just that awareness out there. So it does feel like a different lockdown this time. Yeah, the biggest worry for us yesterday was the fact that the new furlough scheme is till March, and is that reflection of where we're going to be at in March? Are we just settling in and bunkering down? I mean, the thing I think about as well is, of course, they've got to open up retail December the 2nd for the Christmas rush, haven't they? Otherwise, we're going to see.
Otherwise, they drive everybody to Amazon, and the high street, which has struggled for years now, is just irreparably damaged, I'm sure. But again, I'm not going to make any political statements on that. But yeah, you're right. As a male shopper, I still prefer shopping online anyway. Independent retailers across the land will be very concerned about ensuring that they can see a rush before Christmas. And of course, hospitality, Lord only knows, Ben, the Christmas parties, I can imagine most employers I speak to have made decisions not to have Christmas parties, not just because of social distancing issues and whether or not it's the responsible thing to do, but also because so many colleagues have lost their jobs. It just doesn't seem to be right to be celebrating with those that still have kept them this year. That's certainly the attitude some are taking. The Christmas parties are bound to take a hit, even if business is open for them. I mean, I've yet to take a decision on the annual Human Results Christmas party, small gathering though it always was. But I do like to have one, especially in a year where we've just seen so little of each other in the flesh, just been via Teams calls. So it would be nice to have something, that might have to be some kind of online meeting instead, and see if I can do something to make it worthwhile for staff to meet me for a chat sometime in more of a social setting.
Well, one thing I was listening to the other day is commercial property. They're very, very worried about commercial property because obviously everybody's taking a hit. Landlords are, tenants are. Where do you expect that to be next year? Because obviously the value's going to drop. Do you expect spiking people buying commercial property, or do you think it's going to bottom out? I think we're going to end up with a lot of empty properties.
Look, my wife's a commercial property lawyer, has been bombed out busy at times this year. Look, I think that in times of deep recession, property lawyers can be busy simply because they're moving people's portfolios around to better interest rates and lower borrowing costs. As my office, as you know, is serviced offices in a large building at the Innovation Centre here, and we've had tenants leaving and we've had other people moving in. People are moving. People are moving to smaller premises, bigger premises. The pandemic is having impact positively on some businesses and negatively in others. And if you've got an online retail business, you've probably never been so busy, and you might need extra space. If you realise that everybody's working from home and you're looking for a hub and a hot desk arrangement, and you're looking to downsize the real estate, then you're moving because of that. So I think the market's moving. Whether we see an impact on the value of property, I think it will depend very much on the nature of that property. I wouldn't like to be, obviously companies like Intu went into administration. I mean, the big shopping centres, the tenants in those shopping centres are in pain, aren't they? So your traditional department stores, your high street shops, your familiar faces. There's bound to be some shopping centres that have suffered hugely, and their tenants have gone into liquidation or have been seeking significant rent reductions. All I would say is that long term, we're a small island, and property prices, if you're in it for the long game, tend to firm up and come back. So if you're in it for the long game, don't panic. If you've got office space and it's in your pension fund, you're in it for the long game. So don't panic. Maybe look at changing what your offering is, and look for smaller units within the buildings, because there's always people looking to space. You just might have to diversify.
I'm actually off to the farm shop in a moment. I don't really fancy going into the supermarket. Do you see people starting to head back to the farm shops away from the supermarkets during the second lockdown?
Yeah, I would imagine some are. I would hope so as well, Ben. I don't think that there's a lot of people who've just felt uncomfortable all year from going to the supermarket, and have got very used to the convenience of the click and collect or the home deliveries. And also, just remember having found independent retailers locally who've gone into home deliveries and have been delivering what people want, that their people are going to continue with it. I mean, we used to find that milkmen always let us down because they were never delivering milk at a time of day when we needed it. But early on in the pandemic, somebody promised us that the milk would be on the doorstep by 6 o'clock in the morning when we did need it, and they've not let us down. And they supply us with milk, orange juice, and indeed bread and croissants and things like that if we want it. So you give the consumer what they want, and consumer will give you some loyalty back. So we're continuing to use those independent suppliers that can give us what we want. So I hope that's going to continue. It'll help local businesses and just help maintain their relevance. And one thing I've noticed, during the height of the lockdown, a number of pubs in Telford and probably a few restaurants as well started doing takeaway service, and they kept going right through the period when they were open and able to serve people. And whilst sometimes I think they were too busy to do takeaways, they're all committing to continuing that service, and I think that's great. in a town where, frankly, if you didn't like Chinese curry or fish and chips or pizza, if you got fed up with it, it's not a matter of like. I eat everything, as you know, Ben, but sometimes you tire of it and want something a bit different. So it's great that there's 4 or 5 pubs at least now in Telford, if not more, that will do you a decent meal.
It's funny you mentioned the milkman. We've just gone back to the milkman as well for our milk and juice and panel chocolates rather than the croissants themselves.
Yeah.
Right, Alasdair, thank you very much, sir, for joining us today. It's an update. We have been a little bit upbeat, although it is a difficult time. So if they need your furloughing services, which I never thought you'd be saying you're an expert in furloughing.
We've had to be, Ben. Yeah, we can help people with furlough. I would just say, obviously, those people who've maybe because of the current circumstances, they feel that they have to, it's time to put people on furlough, especially those who haven't been on furlough. Just remember, you do need to get agreement in writing. It is a variation of people's contracts of employment. Don't rely on the ambiguity of whether somebody's acquiesced to it. Actually get a furlough leave letter signed at an early stage. Just on a final note, though, Ben, I think it's, this is a wider point, but I've seen this year, a lot of businesses have started up this year. A lot of those businesses have started up by people out of necessity because they've lost their jobs. Those people will be looking to fall back on relationships they had with their previous employers' customers and suppliers and their customers' marketplace. Really, this is a message to those employers who've had to let people go. For goodness sake, do make sure that you've had a proper look at your contractual arrangements. Restrictive covenants can work. I know in the case of redundancy, it can get more difficult, but do protect your goodwill where you can. And if you're a business startup employing people because you're going great guns, you've got an online business that's expanding, whatever that sector may be that's doing well, again, look to ensure that people have very clear contractual terms that protects your goodwill, your customer lists, your confidential data, your intellectual property, so that you can ensure that that you don't lose your business overnight. Somber note, but if the fact is, in recession, that kind of litigation tends to pick up again. And far too often, as an advisor, you have to advise people that the prospects of successfully enforcing those covenants are not as good as they could have been had they been properly drafted in the first place. So it's an investment worth looking at.
You're right. You always give great advice. So please do seek Alasdair's website, humanresults.co.uk. Please do subscribe to this podcast. It is a very popular podcast that is obviously picking up subscribers all the time. And we are giving out as much information as we can about different areas. Thank you once again for joining us, Alasdair, today. It's
okay, Ben. Well, hopefully be able to look at other things as far as the usual autumn updates next time.
Yeah, we're still waiting for this. We're still waiting for this legal update.
It's the fact is, everything's just gets overshadowed by the harsh reality that we're all in. We haven't had quite the same statute and reportable case law worth really getting our teeth into. I think, however, we'll wait to see what happens with hopefully a deal with Brexit at some point before Christmas, and then we'll see what that means. But I don't think it'll make much difference in the short term.
Yeah. I think one thing we can promise, though, Alasdair, is that your legal update will definitely be out before the US election sorted. On that note, thanks for listening, everybody. Please do subscribe. Thanks, Alasdair. Cheers. Thank you.